So how will all this work if you need to create a new team for a product?
You have a getting to know you time. The teams have to become gelled, learn how to work with each other. If you constantly reform teams, because, oh, we got a new project, we better put new people on it, well, okay, you've got to go through, you've heard of storming, forming, storming, norming, and performing. A team has to go through these steps in order to get used to working together to gel. So a team will take time to learn how to work together. And if you reform a team or put it together in a team, it will take time for that team to learn how to work together. So we do, I think, way too much reforming of teams and having whole new teams work together, and then we have to guess what their velocity is, rather than having stable teams to which we give work. Now, you can't always have stable teams, but if you can, it makes no sense to constantly reform them. And especially, it doesn't make any sense to constantly reform teams in the interest of utilization, because utilization is almost always the wrong measurement to optimize. So there's more damage done in the name of high utilization than almost any other thing that I can imagine. And utilization itself, anybody who understands queuing theory, is focusing on utilization is guaranteed to bring everything to a crawl and slow everything down. A higher utilization after a certain point, the slower everything goes. Yeah?
Do you think it's a good idea to increase the size of a team through the time? First, I don't know, 2 persons starts the project, build the architecture, and then after 2 weeks, another 2 person joins the team, and the knowledge is shared between these people, and another 2 weeks, and another pair, and another pair.
For a startup project, that can work well. You have to know the people and know how things work and know how, you know, what their skills are and all that sort of stuff. But especially if you use strong pairing mechanisms, that can, that's a place where pair programming is probably the best because it brings people up to speed fastest. I think that the answer to your question is going to depend on the situation, and that you have to experiment and find out. Which, by the way, brings me to my next topic, which is you got to constantly improve. And constant improvement is all about running experiments and figuring out what works for you. Okay, you can start wherever you are, doesn't matter, but you should never consider where you are good. Where you are is where you are, and there has to be a way to be better. So the concept of improvements, in Toyota they have a kata. You know what a kata is? So who here is in martial arts? Anybody do any kind of martial arts? Nobody? Okay, so you know what kata is. Yes, it's a repeatable movement that you do again and again, and your sensei teaches you that, and you learn then how to do something by constantly doing that motion, right? So that's what kata is, and at Toyota they have one kata that they teach everybody in the company as they come in as junior technical people, and it is the improvement kata, which means when you want to do anything, the first thing you do is visualize what perfect looks like. Now, you're not going to get there, but you should start by visualizing what it would be if you were perfect. Perfect quality, immediate response time, that sort of thing. And then, and this is extremely important, you must know how things work now. You can't guess, you know, you don't look at numbers on your desk. You must have a really good understanding of how things actually work. Not how you wish they work, not how they kind of might work, but how they really work today exactly and in detail. And then you guess what? There's a great big distance between the two. There's perfection way out there, and there's current condition. And the next thing you do is define, where do I believe I can get to in 6 months, or in a year, or 3 months, or whenever? What's my next target condition? And the reason why you had a vision is so you make sure that your target condition is along the right path. And then guess what? You would be there if there weren't obstacles. So there are obstacles. And what you need to do is all the time, constantly, overcome this obstacle and get to the next target condition. And when you get there, those of you who know about katas, what happens? You do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And if you take a look at this kata, this is how all of the tools that Lean has were developed. Not that they're magic tools, but by doing this, Toyota developed all of the different things like Kanban and all those kind of things that they developed. So if you do this, you can develop your own tools, your own answers to your questions. And that's what I encourage you to do, is constantly develop your own answers to your questions and get better and better at what you do by running experiments and constantly getting better. There's a lot more that I could also say about that, but you know, it's 20 after, so I won't. And then the next one is respect for people. In the end, it's all about people, and you know that, but everybody has to know that. So I like this one example that I'm going to tell you about. It's a company from Oslo that's one of my favorites. It happens to be Tamber. And they do these big screens, you know, that people communicate with. And they said, Tom and I went on a tour in 2007, and Olaf Mandel says, "Hi, glad to meet you." He invited us, because I'm just a C++ programmer, but you know, my bosses let me do whatever I want, so here's my plan for the 2 days. And by the way, see this screen here? Everything we do in this company is to make it possible for people to communicate using the screen. And what we do in our offices, because we're programmers, is we use the screen. We have everybody on the team in a little video box. And I've actually had this up in my room for about 18 months. Everybody on the team, I can just look up and talk to him. It's been on full-time all the time. So, you know, he uses his own screen. And then the VP came in and said, well, what we do in this company is we make it possible for people to communicate using screens. And our biggest competitor is Polycom in the US, and they have 40% of the market. And so we talked about his area like that. And then we went on a factory tour, and there was an engineer that was doing testing of some electronic equipment. So Olaf asked her to tell us what she was doing, and she said, well, you know, we really understand what people need in order to communicate well with screens. And we know that they need to have such and such a refresh rate, otherwise it doesn't work. And we wanted to have a low price system, but we couldn't find a camera, an OEM camera on the market that had the refresh rate we needed at the price point that we had to have for our low cost system. So we decided to build one. And we're building it, and here it is, and I'm testing it, and here's its current refresh rate, and we're just about there, and so on. So she knew everything about why she was coming in to work in the morning. And it just went on and on. Every team that we talked to said, we make it possible for people to communicate with screens, and here's how what I do relates to that. And that is really understanding the purpose of your work. And it was really interesting to run into all of those folks. Olaf says that his company, the engineers and the salespeople are the most respected positions. Why? Because we make great stuff and we sell it. So obviously, those are the respected positions. The managers, they're just here in support of the respected positions. And the other thing we saw at Tamberg was a great pride in the way they did work and the products that they made. It was just, you could just about feel it. This is one of their products that Olaf was told us about. It went from 20 months from an idea to production. You can see it was basically a software system. And he said, here's how we do product development at Tamberg. We spend very little energy on things that are not essential. We don't follow a plan. We don't follow procedures. We don't track hours. We don't measure project costs. Decisions are delayed as much as possible. To fail is okay, therefore we deliver spectacular stuff. Think about that. Doers are very much respected in Tamberg. We hire and keep exceptional people, and this in Oslo, where that's apparently a really difficult thing to do. Communication is a key skill for all of our engineers. We are fast and sloppy, but you know, nothing sloppy about their product. We release early and we release often. Little documentation gives effective communication. Slack is embedded and Skunkworks projects are appreciated. You know, this was not true when we went there. Their biggest problem was they were trying to stuff too much work down the development organization, so I'm glad they kind of backed off a little bit. The company builds on trust. Developers are treated as professionals, not resources. We have fun and we make a lot of money. So he said, we follow principles, not processes. And you could just tell it there. Everybody there respected The developers and the salespeople, because they were the ones that made great stuff and so on. So that's what I mean by people. And you know, it's much more than, well, what does respect people mean? It means making it possible for people to do brilliant work.